So this is the first time I heard about your organization, and you're out of Lansing, right?
Correct.
Will you just talk about like what's your role as the director? Like, and how did that come about? Because I don't, is this even your background?
Yeah. So I guess my role as director is to really be underneath supporting others as they collaborate throughout the Mid-Michigan region. So kind of half of one wing of our work is across organizations. So that's nonprofits and educational institutions, businesses, faith entities, municipal governments. And then the other wing is with what we call New American communities. And we define New Americans as anybody living here in the Mid-Michigan area who was born outside the US and now calls this place home. So my role is to really be underneath those wings and trying to support leaders and all of those places achieve their mission and ensure that they have the resources they need to reach the new American population.
Yeah, and how long have you been the director?
About 12 years.
Wow, okay. But you weren't the original, like you didn't launch it, right? Or did you?
No, my career started 25 in the refugee and immigrant space 25 years ago. I was helping out in resettlement efforts, and then I moved to an educational nonprofit, and I was there 7 years, and then now here. So, no, I was not the founder. The IRC was a coalition of a larger collaborative. And it remained actually throughout a couple of decades. It had different chapters. And when I came in, I just was really excited about its potential. I learned from other community work that I had done. There were incredible efforts underway throughout the community to support newcomers, wonderful leaders, and I just wanted to invite them to the table and see what was possible.
Okay, so how did you end up here? Because you said where were you before, right? Right before this?
Professionally, I was with a nonprofit,
Okay.
an educational nonprofit here in the Mid-Michigan area. And then I had sort of done my chapter there. I loved that work. And um, kind of came upon this opportunity, not really sure what it could grow into. And then started just working with the community and it found its own voice.
You've been in refugee work pretty much all of your professionally, almost all of your vocation.
Mhm.
Um, so would you just share a little bit about the origin story of IRRC and like its beginnings?
Yes. Um, it was originally created as a coalition under a larger collaborative called the Power of We. And it was amongst other coalitions designed to support a specific population as they made their life here in the greater Lansing area. Um, and then those other collaboratives or coalitions, some of them I think are still around, but they've also had different chapters, as has the larger power of we. But the IRC also had sort of its ups and downs. But it really, I think that when it had the opportunity to really expand and bring new partners to the table. Our community took advantage of that, and then they really gave it sort of the wings to fly. So that's sort of where we are now. So it's an organization that runs on the engine of all of its stakeholders. No one's required to be at the table, and yet they show up month after month and throughout the month working to strengthen our community.
Yes, I know that you have, I think it's over 50 um, organizations that are networked together. Is that right?
Yeah, and growing. There's probably over 60 that are in immediate touch. And then part of what we try to do is have networks within networks,
Hmm.
because we don't necessarily have to or can have relationships with all all the different communities, but then sort of have these liaisons that grow the web out as well. So, yeah, and all of that again is a testimony to how the region has responded and risen up to welcome new people.
Um, uh, so I know that there's all these networks that are working together, and um, so I was just curious, could you give us give some examples of how does that unfold in the Lansing area? Like what does that look like um, if a refugee or an immigrant comes and needs to be connected with somebody? Like how does that work?
Mhm. So we have different ways people arrive. We have a now 50-year history of resettling refugees. So that program is a federal program that has been in place in our community, like I said, for 50 years. And so we have historically welcomed people from all over the world. Our local high school is sort of a microcosm of that. We have over 60 nationalities and languages. So that's one way by which people arrive. We certainly have immigrants as well that come to work, come to study. We're home of MSU. So certainly have international students and other ways as well. So multiple pathways that through which people arrive. We have a initial couple of nonprofits in the refugee world that help with that initial phase of resettlement. But the goal of the resettlement program has always been to help people quickly become anchored in their communities. And I think that's really sort of the sweet spot where the IRC was able to take off because as those nonprofits sort of wind down their services, people are introduced to the wider community, and then those entities have taken up the responsibility of linking with them. So our schools have wonderful outreach programs, our public libraries, our health centers, our community centers, our places of worship. So I think that's how people, and then of course word of mouth in all these communities is quite strong. So they find their way to where they need to be.
Yeah, I wasn't even thinking about this. I mean, the schools are an obvious way to connect with people. Um, and I'm, of course, Lansing, you're right there with MSU. So it's a great, and they have a great commitment to diversity and as well. So that would be a natural connection there. And I was thinking about you made the comment that a couple of your programs are federally funded. So I was just curious if you're willing to talk about it. How has IRRC been affected by the current administration? Or, I mean, maybe they have or haven't. So how have they, and if so, how?
Mhm. Um, I mean, I would say, the impact, I think I would start with really saying the community's been impacted. That's
Got it.
often where my mind goes first. Our neighbors, um, our city, our schools, our neighborhoods are used to welcoming new people throughout the refugee resettlement program and other ways. And that program has, for the most part, really just been completely suspended. So we're seeing the region, suffer and people not filling jobs that are needed to be filled. So it's a new day for us in that way. We've tried to diversify our funding on some level, and that has helped. We also rely on a very large volunteer um, foundation, and so that has helped. But again, there's a lot of unknowns for many folks in the nonprofit world, and so we would be in that bucket with them.
Yeah. Yeah. And thinking about the idea of that you've had to diversify and I mean, fortunately you have that history, right? That 50-year history in the community. So I imagine that helps. Um, uh, are there ways that we can be supporting IRRC and or just refugees and immigrants in general.
So I am a trained educator. I think that's the lens I take wherever I go. And so I just think even a podcast like this is an incredible first step because I believe everything starts with learning.
Right,
We have a lot of information coming at us in these times, but it doesn't always mean we're absorbing it. And
right,
so I think learning about immigration to America, the contributions that newcomers have made, people tapping into their own family's migration story, all that really helps fill out our story of who we are as Americans. Um, Talking to others, having those hard conversations. Speaking of the faith community, I was in a meeting a couple of weeks ago, and faith leaders were reflecting and saying, even within their own congregations, there are varying views on things, and as there are in any society. But it's hard to have some of those difficult conversations because we don't want to divide it even more. And so we were able to compile a resource to pass along to them that helped faith communities and secular as well, but have those courageous conversations, which I can definitely share that if you'd like. But I
yeah,
think the more we learn, the stronger our nation will be. So making sure good information is getting out, strong relationships are being built. Um, and then I think also just enjoying this work and having fun with it. We have a community read that we launch every year at World Refugee Week. We celebrate it as a week. It's a day, but we celebrate it as a week. And so we'll be launching that community read in June, and encouraging people to read and join in dialogue circles. We have supper clubs where we come together across all kinds of communities and celebrate restaurants that have a story, whether that's an immigrant or refugee owned restaurant or an American restaurant, long-term American restaurant that's been in our community for generations. There's one that's we did last year. It was right across from our GM plant, and GM workers historically went there to have a meal after their shift, and we wanted to celebrate that too. So I think it's learning, it's sharing a life in our communities, celebrating our communities. All of those are kinds of things that we focus on.
yeah. I love that idea of the restaurants and um, gets me thinking of who should what local restaurant should I have on the podcast to help tell their
Mm,
stories. Uh, thinking about helping to tell their stories. Of course, uh, I'm in Detroit, and I'm very close to Dearborn,
mhm,
so we have a lot of um, Middle Eastern families, but specifically Iranians, and um, it's a difficult time for the situation happening right now in Iran. And so I guess I'm curious with your educational background, um, how might we support and encourage our Iranian neighbors, and then maybe how to have conversations with other neighbors who maybe are not as supportive, like just to have that start. How do we start to have that conversation, maybe?
mhm. Yeah, it is. It's a hard time for Iranians. It's a hard time for people from Lebanon. They are also struggling across the region. The
Right.
whole region is suffering. Uh, so I am someone that believes in always reaching out. It's just whenever something happens in the world and we have a local community or I have a friend that is part of that community, I just always make it a practice to reach out. And I know that can be hard because we don't always feel like we have the right words.
Right.
But I think acknowledging what's going on matters. Um, so I find myself these days um, understanding intellectually that people can have different views on the political pieces of things and all of that. But at the end of the day, we all want safety and we all want hope.
Right.
And so that is what I find myself saying to people is, I wish you safety, you and your loved ones safety and hope. Um, and I also, with regard to conversations with people that may not have connections to directly to what is going on in the world, I think that honestly, this is also where faith communities have a really special role. Faith communities have long helped us channel our shared humanity. The history of your church, I was reading about the history of your church's testimony to that, welcoming people from all over the city of Detroit, all over the world, a long, beautiful history of that. And so I think channeling that is really important. And I would say let's never confuse any government with its people.
Right.
That we we may some parts of the world may have more or less influence over the governments that rule them, but they are not the same. And can't always and shouldn't always be conflated. And so we can perhaps have one conversation about the politics of things that go on, but ultimately humans are humans.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think we can all relate to that.
I definitely want those resources that you mentioned because I'll definitely share those in the show notes with people. Um, is there something that you wish, like, the average American understood about immigration?
I don't know. I read a lot and I think about this a lot. And I sometimes I think we've made it too complex.
Mm.
It's is about people moving. And of course, we have to have policies and laws, and that's part of uh, having a functional country. But people have always moved all the world over. And all the world over, people want to contribute to their communities. They want to see their children make friends. They want their children to be safe, to learn. We want that for our own children. And so I think sometimes when we can go back to that a little bit, we go back to our own history, where immigration was in some ways complex and in some ways not as complex as we've made it now. Um, So I guess I find myself thinking, sometimes we're told to be scared of the things that we shouldn't be,
Mm.
and not to worry about the things that we should be worried about.
Right.
And so I find myself again centering learning, as the key to progress and reflection and taking in information, but really slowing down and thinking. Um, this country's taken in people from its inception. It's
Right.
how it was made, and I think we can welcome new people and also uphold the best that this country has to offer.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, are there any books that you might suggest for people to read? If you can't think of any of the off the top of your head, we can always put it in show notes later, but
Oh my goodness. I love reading, so I almost actually go blank because of
right.
the opposite problem. I love our community read from last year.
Yep.
It's called The Immigrant Advantage, and it's actually on our website, along with a video of it was a wonderful, oh my gosh, it was such a fun time. We actually had the author come visit, and she did a whole bunch of different programs. So that video's on our website under Reading with Us. And I think that it's a lovely tribute to the kinds of communities that are created when we celebrate the people that are here and those new to us, which is our goal at the Immigrant Refugee Resource Collaborative. We really, it's the story behind our logo is those are two communities that meet in the middle and flourish. Um, I love what Claudia Kolker did with that book. I think she's an amazing thinker and she's become a dear friend. And I think she nailed it with how we can how we can grow from meeting people.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I'd love to see that one up there.
Yeah, that's great. Well, and I didn't, I hadn't found that page on your website, so I'll definitely share that and include it in the show notes so people can watch the video and get the book, right? Well, thank you so much. Is there anything else you wanted to share that maybe I didn't think to ask?
Yeah, like I said, I appreciate the opportunity to reflect and um, find hope and celebrate and um, encourage people to keep learning and to keep reaching out. The more we share a life with one another, um, the stronger everybody will be and our country will be.
Right.